To his horror, he goes out of his room to get his firing weapon and forcefully opens his closet, but Walter finds no one. He puts down the gun, picks up his camera, and replays the film, but before he finishes, the tall and naked man from the closet goes out and grabs the firing weapon in Walter's face, making the poor guy shout in fear. The movie begins with a long-haired woman named Clara who washes plates, spoons, and forks in their kitchen sink. When she is about to finish her task, Clara hears tiny and creepy voices coming from the sinkhole. She stops for a moment and gently leans her head towards the sinkhole to listen to the creepy voices that she assumes come from humans. What she hears is the conversation about their plan to kill Clara. Just a few seconds after Clara hears the terrifying conversation in the sinkhole, her husband, Juan, arrives at their house. The man is puzzled by his wife's terrified reaction, so he asks if his wife has a concern. Pulling up her courage to talk, Clara tells her husband about the voices she hears in the sinkhole, and she emphasizes that they are human voices who plan to take away her life. Juan is bewildered to hear such an unbelievable story from his wife, so he tells Clara that the sound she hears might be coming from a leaking plug. Even if Clara is persistent in telling Juan that the sound she hears is human voices, she cannot do anything but join her husband to sleep in the bed and let her creepy experience pass their minds. Before the sun gets up, the thumping sounds coming from Clara and Juan's neighbor, Walter, awaken the couple. Clara gets up to go to the bathroom while Juan stands to pick up his slippers and slam them onto the wall that connects their house to Walter's. Juan shouts at Walter to stop the noises that he is making. Still, the thumping continues to get louder, making the pissed husband go out of their house to open his intercom speaker of Walter and tell him to stop the noises again. Juan is puzzled to hear an inaudible sound from Walter's intercom, but the thumping sound stops, so he decides to get inside their home. When Juan steps inside their house, he proceeds to walk toward their bedroom. Before reaching their bed, Juan hears another thumping sound, but this time it comes from their bathroom. Curious about what happens inside, he opens the door and walks in, but a horrifying scene blows his mind. Juan sees Clara floating above their bathtub, and an invisible creature is holding her head and slamming it against their bathroom wall. His poor wife is lifeless, and the blood from her head splashes around the bathroom corners. Juan shouts in horror, grief, and confusion. He keeps throwing questions to Clara about why it happens to her, but the head of his lifeless wife is continually slamming on the walls. Little do they know that Walter also experiences supernatural tendencies inside his house. At first, he thinks he is sick and blames himself for the creeps that keep on repeating inside his house, so he decides to take medicine. Every night when he sleeps, the bed that he uses always shakes, and even his furniture moves. He tries to look underneath his bed to see anything, but he fails. When he gets up, a naked man is hiding under his bed. The light of his room shuts down, and when Walter switches on the light, he hears footsteps walking away from him, so he immediately goes to his bed and falls asleep with fear in his heart. When Walter wakes up, everything inside his room is a mess, as if a storm had walked inside his house and crashed all his belongings. To find a solution, Walter decides to contact Dr. Maura Albrecht, a known paranormal investigator, and he tells his supernatural experiences. Still, due to lack of evidence, they decline his appointment. To prove his experience, Walter sets up a camera above his closet and points its lenses at his bed before he goes to sleep. After completing the setup, Walter silently lies on his bed while keeping his eyes on the camera. Walter looks at the camera and waits for what is about to come until the lights go off and the camera splashes below. He stands up, gets the camera, and watches the video. When Walter clicks the play button, he sees on the recording a tall and naked man who stands beside his bed, looks at him, and then opens the door of his closet and goes inside. To his horror, he goes out of his room to get his firing weapon and forcefully opens his closet, but Walter finds no one. He puts down the gun, picks up his camera, and replays the film, but before he finishes, the tall and naked man from the closet goes out and grabs the firing weapon in Walter's face, making the poor guy shout in fear. In the afternoon, a boy goes to a faucet in front of Walter's house to drink some water, but before his mouth touches the dripping water, a voice coming from the window of Walter's house drives him away. This made the boy step backwards while his gaze was fixated on the window until he reached the middle of the road, and a bus hit his whole body, making him fly a few meters, and it took away his life. The neighborhood goes out of their homes, and horror strikes them when they learn that Alicia's son is the bloody little boy on the road. Yano is about to sleep when he gets a call from Funes, a police commissioner. Funes tells him he should come to Alicia's house to help him with a mysterious case. Being a former coroner and an investigator of supernatural events, Yano does not hesitate to get up from his bed and drive towards Alicia's home, which he learns is the woman police commissioner Funes had a relationship. Once he arrives, Yano sees the muddy footprints of Alicia's son, indicating that it comes from the cemetery, and walks back to their home. Funes points to the kitchen where the little boy is sitting. When Yano arrives at the kitchen, he sees the child covered in mud and sits at the end of the table with a glass of milk and a few sweet snacks. The brave Yano goes near him and puts on his eyeglasses to see the boy clearly. Zooming in, the child does not move and still has its deformed face. He has a rotten smell, and his fingers are damaged. Yano states that it indicates that the dead boy gets out of his grave using his bare hands. After Yano scans the lifeless child, he tells Funes that they should bury him again and that the police commissioner should report that Alicia's case is similar to the point of a grieving family who cannot yet accept the death of their loved one. Hence, they get their corpse back from their grave. In the afternoon, Yano gets out of Alicia's house and sees an old lady who takes pictures of Walter's house, which is located across the road from Alicia's home. Yano recognizes that it is Dr. Maura Albrecht, who is also a known paranormal investigator. When he asks why she takes pictures, the doctor says that Walter sends her evidence of the supernatural phenomenon inside his house. Knowing that the video clip Walter gives her is a shred of evidence, the doctor goes to investigate, but Walter is nowhere to be found and leaves his house empty. After hearing her reason for being in the neighborhood, Yano invites Dr. Albrecht to go inside Alicia's house to let her see an exciting subject. When the doctor lands her feet outside the grieving mother's home, Dr. Albrecht takes pictures of the muddy hand and footprint around the entrance of the White House. When she goes inside, Dr. Albrecht sniffs a smell of a dead person, so Yano leads her to the dining table, and without a surprise, she sees the body of the muddy, dead boy sitting at the end of the dining table. This leads Dr. Albrecht to join Yano in their investigation of the supernatural events in the neighborhood's selected houses. In the psychiatric facility, Yano, Dr. Albrecht, and another supernatural investigator named Rosenstock visit Juan. To start their investigation, the paranormal investigators extract information from the events that Juan can recall. He states about the thumping sounds that he hears, and he says that Walter fixes things inside his home at an unusual hour, but he does not know that Walter only makes that as an excuse to hide his paranormal experiences. After the interrogation, the supernatural investigators ask for Juan's permission to investigate his house by presenting him with a permission letter. The investigators also mention that Alicia and Walter permit them to examine their house, which convinces Juan to sign the permission letter. In the evening, Funes and the three supernatural investigators arrive at the cursed neighborhood. To investigate each house for the whole night, they separate themselves. Funes and Rosenstock go into Walter's house, Yano proceeds to Alicia's, and Dr. Albrecht goes into Juan and Clara's house. When they get inside the homes, they set spiritual tracking devices in each place to locate the presence of paranormal phenomena. In Juan's house, Dr. Albrecht starts to take pictures in every significant corner, including those bloody walls in the bathroom. In Walter's house, Funes is timid and almost silent because of the terror he feels about being inside a place where supernatural things happen. Rosenstock admits that he feels the same fear that grows within Funes, but his excitement to investigate covers it all, so he and Funes go around the house until they reach the kitchen and see a creepy and weird scenario. In Walter's kitchen, Rosenstock and Funes see his utensils hanging upside down and are attached below the floating shelves. The fear that is within Funes starts to grow bigger as he stares at the horrifying things that they see, but Rosenstock smiles and excitedly slides his fingers to the floating utensils as if he is strumming an instrument. His hand goes back and forth in strumming until a knife pierces in the middle of his hand, and its tip attaches below the shelf, pinning Rosenstock's hand to pain. Blood flows from Rosenstock and Funes does not seem to know what to do until they both hear the sound of someone sucking the investigator's blood, which comes from the inside of the floating shelf. Without a second thought, Funes pulls his firing weapon and points it at the shelf, but when they open its door, they see no one. In Alicia's house, Yano stands in the window where he can peek outside and see Walter's house. He is on a call with Funes, who is currently shaking after he wipes the blood of Rosenstock on the floor. As they talk, Yano sees a naked and tall man in one of Walter's rooms, so he says it to Funes over the phone. Funes checks the room but finds no one, but Yano is persistent that he sees someone standing in the room. When he swings his head to the right, it disappears, but the naked and tall man appears when Yano turns his head to the left. He continues to swing his head back and forth until it appears in front of Yano and he loudly shouts in horror. After hearing Yano's screams over the phone, Funes trembles and goes to Walter's bedroom, where Rosenstock currently investigates. The police commissioner tells Rosenstock his plan to quit their investigation. Still, Rosenstock shares with him what he discovers. On the left side of Walter's bed, Rosenstock lifts the blanket and they see nothing, but he discovers that there are different points of view to see what is unseen, and so, he lifts the blanket to the footboard, and they see a bare foot of the naked man. Accomplishment and enthusiasm are evident on Rosenstock's face, opposite to Funes' terrible expression, so he decides to go out of Walter's house because of his unfathomable fear. Once he gets out of Walter's house, Funes proceeds to Alicia's house, where Yano stays. The police commissioner does not find Yano, but he sees broken glasses on the floor, which come from the storage cabinet. From the inside, he hears someone shouting for help, so he points his firing weapon and carefully opens the cabinet door, but Funes finds no one. He goes to its side, and Funes breaks the side of the storage cabinet and sees a creature who asks for his help to get him out, yet instead of helping, he goes out of Alicia's house. In Juan's house, Dr. Albrecht scans the large crack on the wall of Juan and Clara's bedroom, which is the wall that connects their house to Walter's. Using her mini flashlight, she grabs a chair, sits in front of the crack, and flashes her tiny source of light to Walter's house. She sees someone looking at her, but it does not fear her. Funes arrives, and he tells the doctor about the horrifying scene that he experiences. The desperate and terrified police commissioner asks Dr. Albrecht if there is a solution for the horrifying case they are investigating. Still, the doctor tells him they cannot do anything. Before she continues talking, a giant hand swings out of the big crack and grabs the head of Dr. Albrecht, and pulls her back from the other side of the crack. Seeing the brutal incident, Funes immediately becomes stiff and experiences a heart attack. His body falls to the ground and sweats start to cover him as he fearfully stares at the ceiling and hopes to survive. In the middle of catching Funes' breath, Alicia comes and tells Funes about his unacceptable action of putting her son in the freezer. Funes desperately wants to survive and pleases Alicia to bring him to the hospital. Even if she has a heavy heart for him, Alicia accepts Funes' request, and they both get out of Juan's house. Alicia goes inside her car, and Funes is also about to ride in when his shock stops him from walking. Funes sees Alicia's muddy son in the back seat, and she explains that she has to get his son back. Without a second thought, Funes steps back and rides his own car. Before he leaves, Dr. Albrecht comes out of the house with an elongated neck turned upside down and tells him they are being tortured. In fear, Funes immediately brings his car to life and drives in a speedlight motion until he stops in the middle of the road to smoke and calms himself. When Funes takes enough courage, he switches his car on again and drives back to Juan's house. He grabs gasoline and spreads it to Juan's house, but to his horror, he sees the lifeless body of Alicia hanging with a rope around her neck. In all the exhaustion, fear, and pain, Funes cries out loud and continues to splash each corner with gasoline until he sets the whole house on fire. When he goes outside, Funes sees Yano, whose eyes are pulled out and blood drips down from them. The movie ends in the psychiatric facility where the police interrogate Juan about his knowledge regarding the supernatural investigators. Juan honestly tells them that he knows them by their name and their objective to investigate their house. As they continue questioning him, Juan is distracted by Rosenstock's presence at the back of the police. He points out the burned body of Rosenstock, but the police see nothing. Suddenly, the chair moves by itself and throws toward the camera by an unknown force. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more videos like this to help the channel out. Have a nice day.